volunteer will go ahead and do that photograph. The silent auction will continue through the presentation that you will hear on the Taurus G4, the electric aircraft. Right after that presentation ends, the silent auction will also close. So I just wanted to let you know that I heard a lot of kind of buzz down around here about the P-51 ride. So I just want to let you know there's a little competition there. So I expect that to go for a nice high price. And let's see what else. I think that's about it. So we will go ahead and move on forward. Let me go ahead and introduce to you the president of the National Aeronautic Association, flew here from Washington, Mr. Jonathan Gaffney.
Before we get started, there's a leather jacket back there that's being auctioned off from the National Aeronautic Association. It was worn by Orville Wright when he flew the plane for the first time. See, I'm from Washington, D.C. We talk like that all the time. Just briefly before I get started, for those who aren't familiar with it, the National Aeronautic Association is the oldest national aviation organization in the United States and one of the oldest in the world. Our mission is pretty simple. We support all facets of aviation and aerospace in our country, whether it be soaring or ballooning or fixed wing or rotorcraft or a 137,800-foot parachute jump yesterday. That's the mission of NAA. We support our industry three ways. We administer aviation awards like the Collier Trophy, the Wright Brothers Memorial Trophy, and others. We are the official aviation record keeper in the United States. Our record book goes back 100 years. It says 10,000 entries that are in it. We do aviation records. And of course, the last is we support air sports in America, the balloonists and the skydivers, the rotorcraft, the fixed wing, the aerobats, the modelers. That's the work that we do. Three basic functions we do now for 107 years. So in that spirit, I'm here to present some awards here with Max. So will Robin Reed please join us? Robin? Right there, Robin. The night before Robin was born, his parents were out flying, which means his mother really should have gotten this award. So it should have come as no surprise, therefore, that Robin's life was centered around all things aviation. On his 16th birthday, Robin soloed 5 different tail draggers, and before the age of 20, obtained his private pilot license with single and multi-engine ratings, began flying aerobatics, obtained his commercial license, received his flight instructor rating, and started working towards his A&P license, all before the age of 20. Did you go to school?
Well, there was some problems there.
I'm sure there were some problems there. His early flying career consisted of instructing, flying through difficult terrain for the United States Geological Survey, banner towing and night sign flying, flying cargo, and through it all, gaining experience in a vast assortment of antique, vintage, experimental, and aerobatic aircraft. Somewhere in his remarkable history, Robin got the speed bug and raced at the National Championship Air Races at Reno for 5 years, and through that experience began flying more experimentals and newly restored antique aircraft. A commercial pilot as well, he worked for Republic, Northwest, and now Delta, flying 727s, DC-9s, and now the 747-400. In 2011, Robin put all of his years of experience to use when he teamed up with Dave Morse in the Pipistrel Taurus G4 and won the most prestigious NASA Green Flight Challenge. Robin's remarkable career in just about every facet of the aviation industry over the years is a testament to his skill, knowledge, and certainly your bravery. His willingness to pass on that experience to a new generation of pilots and builders is the reason why he was selected as a recipient of this NAA Certificate of Merit. The certificate reads, the National Aeronautic Association presents the Certificate of Merit to Robin Reed for his career as an instructor, airshow pilot, aircraft builder, record setter, and champion of our great industry. Robin, congratulations.
Thank you. Wow, I just want to pinch myself. To all my friends here, I want to thank you all for being here. I feel so lucky. I feel like I was born under a lucky star. And so many people here I've grown up with. A lot of you people, you were with me nights working on airplanes. Chris Ferguson here, we grew up together. You know, it's like Tom Leonard. When my mom tried to get me at San Jose State, Tom was my mentor, kept me going to classes. And Frank Sweeney, you know, Frank was there the day I soloed the airplanes, the Piper Cub, which I still have. Frank was there taking pictures. You know, it's just like everybody here has helped me achieve all this, and I want to thank you. Thanks.
Will Dave Morse please join us on the stage? As soon as I saw Dave dressed like this, I was going to go back to my car and get changed. Dave Morse started flying in 1968 at the age of 14 and has since logged over 27,000 hours in hundreds of aircraft. Founder and president of Myriad Research, he is one of our nation's top test pilots and is awarded the Spirit of Flight Award from the Society of Experimental Test Pilots, a truly great honor from a wonderful organization. Dave is also a seasoned air racing veteran. This year marked his 34th consecutive appearance at the Reno National Air Races, where he has qualified and has competed in 5 classes: Formula One, Sport Class, Biplane, Jet, and Unlimited. He currently holds the record for the most races at Reno, 233 and counting. That's worth a clap. In 1998, 1999, and 2000, Dave captured the gold at Reno in the sport class, where he set course records for the fastest lap and the fastest qualifying speed. And in both 1998 and 1999 was awarded the Pulitzer Trophy from NAA. In total, Dave holds 13 world speed records, 10 of which still stand. You haven't tried a balloon jump yet, have you? Nothing? Okay.
Next year.
Yep, next year. In 2011, Dave and his co-pilot, of course, Robin, flew together at the Cafe Foundation Green Flight Challenge and won $1.35 million, which is the largest prize in aviation history. Dave is also a 2-time recipient of the Bob Downey Memorial Award for the most inspirational competitor at Reno and the George Al Outstanding New Design Award for his racer, Fastlane. He's very active in the warbird movement and currently flies the B-17 Memphis Belle for the Liberty Foundation. Dave has flown for a major airline, been a 3-time soaring champion, and a flight instructor. He was an FAA designated pilot examiner for 25 years. He currently serves as an FAA airworthiness representative. You know, the mission statement of the National Aeronautic Association states clearly that we are dedicated to the advancement of the art, sport, and science of aviation in America. Dave, you alone personify the work that we do. Congratulations. His certificate reads, the National Aeronautic Association presents the Certificate of Honor to Dave Morse for over 46 years of service to the aviation and aerospace community as a test pilot, a mentor, instructor, air race champion, world record holder, and a leader in our great industry. Dave, congratulations. Please, sir.
So, anyway, this is pretty cool. I've got a wall at the house going down the stairs that I call my Descent of Fame, and this will be added to that. I'm not sure really what to say. I've got a little presentation I'll give later, so you'll probably all hear enough of me. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to take 1 or 2 minutes and get all set up for their presentation. So when we're queued up and ready, we'll go ahead and start that. Don't forget, silent auction closes when their presentation is done.
Oh, that's fine. The score is now 11-4 Giants. So before I start my presentation, I just want to mention one thing. It was a $1.35 million prize that Robin and I didn't actually get, that was divided up amongst us, so we're not really rich. But it was a big prize. So I want to start a little bit talking about what the challenge was that the Green Flight Challenge presented. And as you can see, it's a pretty, if you just read it, it's not that lofty of a goal if you think about it, but if you actually start thinking about it, my Prius can get 50 miles per gallon with 4 people, so that's 200 passenger miles per gallon. And it does that at 50 to 60 miles an hour. What they were proposing was that you would go better than a Prius at 200, and you have to do it for 200 miles in under 2 hours, so over 100 miles an hour, and only using 1 gallon of gas per passenger. 4 years ago when they announced that, I was actually already testing some other electric airplanes and had flown quite a bit in China and some in the United States in electric airplanes. And this was so far from being a realistic goal that I kind of scoffed at it. But I was interested in it, and I followed on, and I put my name in the list of people that were applying to the Green Flight Challenge as a potential pilot. And there was actually several people that entered this contest. This was one of the entries. It was called the Shroff. And it was a pretty futuristic looking airplane, looks kind of like a Jetson thing. It had small turbines and electric engines and a lot of technology that was real cutting edge. And they contacted me to be their test pilot. And I looked at their website and looked at the airplane, and it was pretty interesting. Another company had a different idea, and that was Pipistrel. And they also contacted me, but their idea was a little bit more realistic, but not quite as far-fetched or out of the box. They already had this glider in production. It was a self-launching sailplane, and they had an electric version, so they also were playing into the battery technology a little bit. But their idea was to take this airplane. They were already building it, so they already had the wings and the fuselages and the tails. And they could make a new airplane with only one part. And by making a center section that held an engine and the battery, they could then make this futuristic looking airplane that they did all the design calculations for and said, this could achieve the goal of the 200 passenger mile per gallon flight. So they went ahead, and this is the center section. This was the only new part that they actually had to build for the airplane. Everything else was just 2 of their sailplanes. They left 1 wing off of each side, put the center section in, put the batteries and the motor section in the center section, And the batteries there was 800 pounds of batteries that was required for this airplane to have enough energy to do its mission. So where the motor was in the motor glider was also where the batteries were. So the battery was split into 3 sections. That's what one of the batteries looked like. And it was much more than a battery in that with a lithium polymer, they have to have a battery management system that when the battery charges or when the battery discharges, every single cell is monitored and cross-tracked and has the ability so that if one cell starts to get low or higher charge, the battery can arrange itself. So it's almost more of a computer than a battery. And these were built by Pipistrel themselves in their own engineering department. They designed their own battery management system. The airplane then came to Oshkosh. This is you can see the outline of the airplane there. At the end of the week, when everything left, there was an outline of this odd-shaped airplane, and there was several magazine articles that had a picture of the outline in the grass, because a lot of people didn't really know about the Green Flight Challenge, but when they saw this airplane, they thought, what is this for? It created quite a stir. The week after Oshkosh, I started doing the test flying of this airplane, and that was kind of a surrealistic event in itself, in that I spend about 10 days a year at Oshkosh, and it's 1 million people and it's airplanes and everything. And about 2 days after the event, it's 4 runways in the middle of nowhere with nothing going on and no air traffic. And it's really a great place to test an airplane other than that week. And this was at Oshkosh. As you can see, the ramp is empty. I have the whole airport to myself. And we did the first flight out there and put the first 10 hours on the airplane. The airplane was then disassembled again and transported to Hollister. And at Hollister, we developed the program for the contest itself. And there was actually 3 contests. There's a short takeoff where you have to clear a 50-foot obstacle in a certain distance and do it while making less than 65 decibels. So they were challenging us to do a short field takeoff without any noise. Then there was a 200-mile flight that you do for efficiency, even though you still had to do it in under 2 hours. And then on the third contest point was the same track, 200 miles, that you do as fast as you can, but you still have to get better than 200 passenger mile per gallon to qualify. So we were at Hollister, and some of the other requirements for the airplane were changing at that time. Originally, they said you just had to have phase 1 testing done on the airplane, which for a self-launching sailplane was 10 hours. The contest originally thought everybody would bring an airplane, and so they thought you'd have to do 40 hours of testing. So they advised us that we needed to put another 30 hours on the airplane. And we had a few weeks to do it, but it was a little bit of a schedule crunch. This was flying at Hollister. The other thing that happened while we were at Hollister, there was 2 events. One was that we had to have a second pilot that was fully checked out in the airplane and needed to have 10 hours in type. And that's where Robin came in. I'd worked with Robin on several other projects together. I knew he would be an easy fit for the project. So we brought him out. And the other thing that was happening was that Jack Langland, the sort of project coordinator that put this whole thing together, had developed a magic box. And it was going to go with us in the airplane. And through several data sensors and telemetry down to the ground, it was going to measure our winds and temperatures and lift, orographic lift, predict what speed to fly, look at our energy consumption, look at our battery state, decide how many kilowatts we should run. And it was going to make it so that we could fly so efficiently that we were going to win this contest for sure. The only problem was that every time we tested the box, it worked great for about 12 minutes and then it would stop. And we were getting down to the wire And at the time when Robin came into the program, we said that, we'll give it one more day, and if it doesn't work, take it out of the glider, and we're going to have to train Robin to do all these tasks that the box would do, and the two of us would then hopefully be able to fly as efficiently as one person in the magic box. The second thing that happened was I had some other commitments for the air races, and so I pretty much checked Robin out in the airplane and left, and he had to do the rest of our testing and developmental programming. So I'm going to let Robin talk a little bit now about flying the airplane and what his experience was, and then I'll do a little more on what the contest was.
Well, thank you, Dave. Basically, Dave and we've gone back in our teenage years, and we've raced at Reno together. Dave and I have very much the same philosophies on flying airplanes, so we work good on teams. A lot of times, Dave will say, hey, I'm working this project, I can't finish it, can you do it? Vice versa. Or if there's an airplane that Dave won't fly, he says, well, Robin, you want to fly it? Well, if you're not going to fly it, maybe I don't want to. But one of the airplanes that Dave did check me out was in the de Havilland Comet. And the way our checkout went in that airplane, it was the Bill Turner, Tom Wathen airplane. Dave took me for a ride in the airplane. I was in the back seat. It was at Chino. And we came in and landed, and Dave said, well, what do you think? I said, fine, why don't you jump in the back and I'll fly from the front. He goes, no, I'm not getting in the back. If you want to fly it, go fly it. If not, fine, I'm going home. It's like, okay. So Dave had set the bar for me. I knew what the airplane flew like. Dave got out, went and flew the airplane. So Dave and I have a very good understanding on working together. So when I got involved with this project, I had talked to him at some time before saying, Dave, if you're ever doing something on an electric airplane, I would really like to be involved. That's when he called me. It was about November. I think he'd already test flown the airplane and went ahead and brought me in on the project. So I showed up at Hollister, and Dave took me for a ride in the airplane, come in and landed. And I said, okay, Dave, see you later. No more going through the game. I knew the game. And flying the airplane was fairly straightforward. One of the things that Dave had briefed me on is it had a very different idiosyncrasy. And when Dave took off the first few times in the airplane would flex, and it would flex so much, Dave was keeping the cockpit straight, but the other side of the airplane was actually flying about 5 degrees higher. And so Dave had warned me about this idiosyncrasy. So the first time I flew the airplane, he gave me the clues, and I took off and maintained level. One of the things a lot of people ask me is, how could you fly an airplane like this where you're sitting 10 feet off to the side? And well, I had done many years flying at Reno, a lot of formation flying. So it was really just like doing formation flying. You take off 10 feet of center line, you land 10 feet of center line. The one thing that was really interesting about flying the G4 was you were really almost flying two different airplanes. And where it really came into play, like when you're doing crosswind landings with it, I would come in to land, and if I had a crosswind from the left, I would land the left side of the airplane first, and yet it was on the ground, but I wasn't done yet. And now I had to go ahead and fly the right side down. So again, it was stuff that was different, but it wasn't something out of the realm. And Dave had briefed me on this pretty well. So as Dave said, we thought it was just going to be me basically meeting the requirements for the contest and then being his co-pilot for the program. Well, then when the rules were interpreted that we needed to do the full 40 hours, then Dave had his other commitments, so I went ahead and took over on the program. Now, one of the things that from my airline flying, I'm a stick and rudder pilot, but I also became very much my airline life like having checklists and procedures. So after Dave had left, I went ahead and I wrote basically all the normal procedures and emergency procedures. Because one of the things that Dave and I was very concerned with is if we had a fire. And as my dad had taught me many years ago, if you got to take time to think about something, you don't have time. So we had our procedures. Dave and I had talked about it. We worked on it together. And like if we had a fire in the airplane, we knew exactly what we were going to do, and we were prepared to get out of the airplane. So Dave had gone on to Reno, and then I went ahead and started working with the team from the factory, and these guys were all PhDs. But you would talk to them, and they were right on your same level. And there was no egos or anything with these guys. They were just, you know, what are we going to do to make this work? It was one of the greatest teams I'd ever worked with. So we went ahead and we started flying the time off the airplane. And we started working on our procedures, how I was calling back and forth to the ground, telling them what our battery consumption was and what power settings were and everything. So we were developing our flight plan for how we were going to fly it in the contest. So I basically went ahead and we did also some testing on a couple different propellers trying to get the most efficiency out of it. So after we finished that phase, then Dave was already at Reno because he had commitments for Reno, and then I went up there and did crew chief duties for him. And then after that, Dave then took the airplane to Santa Rosa where we continued with the contest.
Do you want to talk anything about the instrument panel? That was the thing you lived with.
Not really. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'm talking about okay. So we go. This is just a picture of the instrument panel, and it's a little bit small. It's hard to see, but that was kind of basically Robin's world, was to look at the voltage, the kilowatts that we were running, our speed, and he would critique me the way I was flying. We had yaw string. We had to keep perfectly coordinated at all times, but also we could sometimes fly on a slight descent. If we're maybe flying a 5-6 feet per minute descent, we could get the airplane on a step, and Robin would help kind of coach me, especially coming out of a turn. He'd call altitudes, you know, within a couple feet. We were really trying to do the best job we could with the energy that we had. When we arrived at Santa Rosa, there had been about 15 teams that had entered, of which 5 actually had flying airplanes the week before the contest. One of those planes wasn't able to make it. It had a maintenance problem and didn't even show up. We had 4 airplanes that showed up for the event, 3 of which were legal. One of the airplanes didn't meet all of the safety requirements and did not put in a ballistic recovery parachute. They were allowed to fly, but only for exposure. They weren't scored. So there was only 3 of us that were really serious competitors. The process before we were allowed to compete was the airplane had to be weighed, as well as Robin and I had to be weighed. And because the scales were in a 40-foot building and we had a 75-foot wingspan, we had to disassemble the airplane and then weigh the airplane piece by piece. Then Robin and I had to get weighed. And it was pretty straightforward, but then we had to put the airplane back together again. One of the things that really impressed me about our team was, as Robin said, they were all doctorates, but they were all very professional. When we were pushing out to the start line on the second day of the contest, we ran over a thorn or something on the runway, and it popped one of our tail wheels. We had 2 tail wheels. And we thought, oh no. And it took about 3 minutes. One of our team members jumped on a golf cart, drove back to the pits, got the pre-mounted, fully inflated tail wheel, came back out with the tools and an extra cotter pin, picked the airplane up, changed it on the ramp, and about 3 minutes later we were ready for our takeoff. And that kind of preparation ran all the way through our whole program. This was the takeoff for the short field contest, which they did on a separate day. And there was a three days of contest. They never would tell us our score. And on the last day when we got the checkered flag, we still didn't really know what had happened. We had to take the airplanes down to Moffett. And there's another little interesting story that happened on the third flight. On our second flight, which was the speed course, or I mean the efficiency course, but it's a 200-mile flight. It was 3 laps of this track. And on the first lap, we saw the E-Genius pass us. And we know it was the E-Genius because it was a T-tail and it had a propeller in front of the tail. And it wasn't just me, Robin saw it too, so I wasn't dreaming. So when we came back on our first lap and we asked the team to time how far ahead of us the E-Genius was, and we were ahead of the E-Genius. So something very strange happened on that lap. And we still don't really know what happened. But when we were planning our strategy for the second day, I was convinced that we should fly the exact same power settings that we had flown before because we knew we could make it, and there's $1.35 million at risk, and I thought we could probably beat the E-Genius. But we were also aware that if they actually did pass us, they had a dash speed that was greater than ours. And the team wanted us to go fast. And I kind of stood and said, no, this is my decision, and we're not going to go fast. So Robin and I went back to our rooms and got ready for the night. My phone rings, and it was Tina, the project manager. He said, can you and Robin come down to the lobby? We have a presentation for you. And they had gone through, they had laid out a plan, they had the battery specs from the manufacturers, the testing that Robin had done, the static testing and they proposed a plan that we should go 10 miles an hour faster, and this is why we can do it, and we won't wear the batteries down. And at the end of the presentation, I kind of looked at Robin, I guess they got me convinced, and so we ended up flying the second leg faster. These are the tracks from our third leg, or the third day of the contest. And it's just a big loop out in the valley. We flew at 10-minute intervals so that we were all flying in the same airspace at the same temperature and wind conditions, but far enough apart that we shouldn't be able to see each other and use each other as navigational clues. This was getting ready for the flight after we'd been weighed in. And this was the team after we thought we knew we had done good enough to beat the 200 passenger mile per gallon. We didn't know exactly how much better, and we had no idea what E-Genius had done. So it was a little bit of a anticlimax. We were done, and now we were going to ferry the airplanes to Moffett for this big event where they're going to announce the winner. We're at Moffett. We still don't know who won. And then they announced that we had not only won, but we had doubled the expected ability to do. We did 400 passenger miles per gallon. $400.3. Oh, 403.5, yeah. To give you an idea of how good that is, this is a little graph showing what other vehicles have achieved. And about the highest one up there is the Prius, again at 50 miles an hour, getting 100 passenger miles per gallon. And the dot way up at the top is what we achieved at that flight. No small accomplishment. And so far, nobody's really come close to equaling it. So we're hoping to see a lot more electric airplanes in the near future. I'm currently actually working with a company just down the road that's developing electric airplanes, and it's a pretty exciting event, and I think that a lot of people are going to see a lot more electric aviation in the very near future. Robin, did you have anything else you wanted to say? One movie to show.
Okay. The one thing I did want to add that, again, I said earlier that we had such a great team that we were working with on the day, I believe it was day or day one, the eGenius team had kind of given Dave and I a little bit of ribbing because we were in our full safety gear, and we were definitely prepared that if we were going to have an emergency that we can handle it. Well, on day two, the eGenius airplane had some structural issues, and the team actually felt that they were going to have to bail out of the airplane. So later that night, I saw their pilot. He came up to me and he apologized to me and says, I am so sorry for ribbing you guys, because we really thought we were going to lose our airplane today, and we might not have been ready for it like you guys were. And again, working with Dave, we had such a great team that it all came together and worked.
Can you run the film? Yeah. This is just to watch this, to see some of the unique characteristics. The airplane even looks unique when it flies. You can see one fuselage lift off before the other. You'll see one landing gear retract, and then the other one slowly retracts. That's because I had a manual gear, and the other fuselage had electric gear that was remoted, so it came up at its own rate. And this was a pretty good crosswind when we were landing at Santa Rosa, so you'll actually see us land one fuselage and then the other.
Tower to tower, Skywing 326 Charlie, entry left base for 14, Santa Rosa.
Cool. Thank you.
Dave and Reed, thanks very much. Does this give anybody else chills to watch this stuff? I mean, do you realize the future of aviation being developed right here in the San Francisco Bay Area? So big thank you to both Dave and to Robin. It's such an exciting time. What a great future that is ahead for all of our scholarship winners and everyone else who is young, get starting their career in aviation. Well, as promised, I said that the silent auction was going to close at the end of the presentation. So here we go. 5, 4, I see someone writing. 3, hold on. Yes, sir? Okay. 1.5.
I am the president of the Captain Davis Scholarship Fund, and I want to tell you,
Here you go.
the P51 thing, Anita's trying to get it.
Okay.
Whoever gets it, I'm giving $400, but don't make Anita Ferris have to pay for it, because she just doesn't have the money. Please? Pretty please? Anita, stand up. You do not have the money to do that. You do not. And if I were to win it, I'd have to give it to the Dahl Scholarship. But please, somebody, save us. Sorry.
Thanks very much, David. And that was from the Dahl Scholarship Fund, is that right? Yes, and I think you all realize that he was one of the pilots on 9/11. Okay, so I still see people writing there, so I'm going to have to count down one more time. It's closed. Great. It's closed. Thank you very much.